Sydney Sweeney's wild life story, from PowerPoint to Euphoria and Mechanic Queen. All right, buckle up, buttercups, because we're about to dive into the whirlwind, glitter-dusted, and surprisingly grease-stained life of the one and only Sydney Sweeney. This isn't just a story of Hollywood stardom. It's a tale of ambition, PowerPoint presentations, and a serious love for vintage cars. Hello, comedy and pop culture connoisseurs. Today, we're zooming in on a name that's been lighting up our screens and probably our TikTok feeds too. Sydney Sweeney. You know her, you love her, or maybe you just know her as that girl from Euphoria who has a lot of feelings. But her journey? Oh, it's way more than just high school drama and perfect tears. The PowerPoint prodigy of Spokane. Our story begins not in a galaxy far, far away, but in Spokane, Washington. And on September 12th, 1997, the world, though it didn't know it yet, welcomed a future queen of deadpan delivery and award-worthy crying, Sydney Bernice Sweeney. Fast forward a bit and picture this: Spokane, a place known for, well, being in Washington. And in this scenic, relatively quiet corner of the world, a young Sydney, probably around 12, isn't just dreaming of Hollywood. Oh no, she's strategizing. While most kids her age were figuring out how to sneak an extra cookie, Sydney was crafting a full-blown 5-year business plan in PowerPoint to convince her parents to let her pursue acting in Los Angeles. I mean, who does that? Her parents, bless their supportive hearts, must have seen this meticulously plotted presentation, complete with projected earnings and a clear ROI, return on investment, their daughter's happiness and future stardom, obviously, and thought, well, she's either a future CEO or a cult leader, but either way, she's committed. So they packed their bags and made the leap. Talk about a persuasive pitch. The Hollywood hustle, and the, oh, I've seen her somewhere. So they land in LA, and it's not instant red carpets and champagne. It's the grind. We're talking bit parts, guest spots, the kind of roles where your grandma proudly tells everyone she was the third cashier from the left. Sydney popped up in shows like Heroes, Criminal Minds, Grey's Anatomy. Basically, if a show needed a young blonde to look concerned or slightly traumatized for a scene or two, Sydney was your gal. This is the paying your dues era. Imagine countless auditions, memorizing lines for characters named Girl Number 2 or Worried Teenager. But through it all, she's honing her craft, learning the ropes, and probably updating that PowerPoint with Phase 2, acquire more than 3 lines. Then came Netflix's Everything Sucks in 2018, a quirky, nostalgic 90s teen drama. Sydney played Emmeline, and people started to notice. It was like, hey, that girl's actually really good. It wasn't a global phenomenon, but it was a definite ding, ding, ding on the She's Got Potential meter. The darker turns and critical acclaim. But Sydney wasn't content just being the charming girl next door. She started veering into darker, more complex territory. And damn, 2018 was a busy year. She appeared in HBO's Sharp Objects as Alice, a troubled young woman in a psychiatric facility. A small role, but incredibly impactful. She held her own opposite Amy Adams, which is like going a few rounds with a heavyweight boxing champ and not getting knocked out. Then The Handmaid's Tale. She played Eden, the child bride, a role that was simultaneously innocent and deeply unsettling. This is where the industry really perked up. Eden was a character that could have easily been a caricature, but Sydney brought this heartbreaking vulnerability to her. Suddenly, she wasn't just promising, she was critically acclaimed. The Euphoria explosion and the White Lotus wave. All right, hold on to your hats, because 2019 is when Mount Sweeney truly erupted. Euphoria. Cassie Howard. Need I say more? Suddenly, Sydney Sweeney was everywhere. Cassie's emotional roller coaster, from a desperate need for love to that infamous bathroom scene, became meme gold and earned Sydney her first Emmy nomination. She wasn't just acting, she was a cultural moment. I have never, ever been happier. And just when you thought she'd be typecast as the beautifully tragic teen, she flips the script and pops up in The White Lotus as the shark-tongued, eye-rolling Olivia Mossbacher. Another Emmy nomination. This girl was collecting critical nods like Pokemon cards. She proved she had range. She could make you cry 1 minute and want to tell her to get off her phone the next. The versatility. More than meets the eye, The Mechanic and Mogul. But wait, there's more. Just when you think you've got Sydney Sweeney figured out, talented actress, queen of the dramatic gaze, she throws another curveball. She's a freaking car mechanic. Yeah, you heard me. She has a TikTok account @Syds_garage where she restores her vintage Ford Bronco. In a world of curated perfection, here's Sydney, covered in grease, fixing up a classic car. It's unexpectedly wholesome and incredibly cool. She's out there changing spark plugs and rebuilding engines. It makes her even more relatable. She's not just a Hollywood doll. She's got grit and probably a really impressive tool collection. And if that wasn't enough, she started her own production company, 50/50 Films, to create opportunities for untold stories, especially for women. From PowerPoint presentations to primetime domination to producing her own content and fixing carburetors, this woman is a force of nature. Conclusion. So what's the takeaway from the Sydney Sweeney saga? It's that ambition, when paired with talent and a seriously good PowerPoint, can take you places. It's that you can be a glam icon and a grease monkey. She's defied expectations, navigated the treacherous waters of Hollywood with a smart head on her shoulders, and probably a well-organized 5-year plan for her next decade. From Spokane to stardom, from girl number 2 to Emmy-nominated powerhouse, Sydney Sweeney is proof that if you dream big, work hard, and maybe learn how to rebuild an engine, the world is your oyster. Or at the very least, you'll have a really cool vintage ride. And trust me, her PowerPoint for world domination is definitely in the works. Probably with a dedicated slide for acquire more vintage cars. And speaking of what's next on that master plan, keep your eyes peeled, because not only is she conquering television and our TikTok feeds, but the big screen is calling her name louder than ever. Rumor has it, and by rumor, I mean exciting industry buzz, she's set to step into some seriously iconic space boots. We're talking about the highly anticipated remake of Barbarella, folks. Yes, that Barbarella. She's not just starring, she's also producing it through her 50/50 Films. Imagine Sydney Sweeney, queen of complex characters and hidden talents, taking on that legendary sci-fi heroine. If anyone can bring a fresh, powerful, and probably hilariously self-aware take to Barbarella for a new generation, possibly lighting up our screens around 2025 or soon after, it's Sydney. Prepare for liftoff, because her cinematic universe is just beginning to expand. So keep watching, keep cheering, and maybe start drafting your own 5-year plans. Who knows? You might just end up as cool as Sydney Sweeney. Though, mastering both emotional depth and engine repair, that's a high bar, my friends. A very high, very impressive, probably perfectly presented bar. That's all for today. Go watch some Sydney Sweeney. Get excited for Barbarella. Or maybe, just maybe, go start that ambitious project you've been dreaming about. Just make sure your presentation slides are on point. Catch you next time. If you enjoyed this video, please give the channel a like and subscribe. Thank you so much.